It had been a day for spring things. Katie learned that when you take your bicycle out of the garage after the winter, it's a good idea to give it a bath. Orbie found out that when you open up a lawn chair, you might be surprised to find a spider has been snoozing there. And they both discovered that the garden hose makes a funny sputtering noise the very first time you use it in the spring. The day it happened, Katie and Orbie were having a great time raking old dead leaves and sticks into a pile. In the flower garden, Dad was digging holes and Mom was placing plants in them. When they were finished with the dead leaves, Katie and Orbie helped cover up the roots of each tiny new plant. Everybody followed the hole digger along, and Dad said they made a great gardening chain. As the family looked at their newly planted garden, Katie and Orbie clapped in appreciation. It was exciting to see the garden come alive. All right, many of the plants needed to flower, but still, it looked like summer was coming and winter was over. And when you're 5, that all by itself is an adventure. Mom decided to go inside and make lunch and lemonade. The day was warm and sunny, and she thought it was perfect for eating out on the picnic table. Katie wanted to stir the lemonade, so she hurried in with Mom, carrying their dirty work gloves. Dad and Orbie were loading the twigs and leaves into the wheelbarrow. Orbie was having a great time. He pretended he was a huge steam shovel as he dug into the leaf pile with his big gloves on. He made a steam shovel noise and picked up a load. Then he turned like a machine over to the wheelbarrow. When his hands were right over the top of the wheelbarrow, he let go. Everything fell in. Dad told him he was a wonderful machine and that he was very glad the Orbie steam shovel was working in his backyard. Orbie chuckled and kept on scooping and lifting. When they were done, Dad told Orbie he was going to take the full and almost spilling over wheelbarrow to the compost pile and empty it out. He asked Orbie if he wanted to water all the new plants before Mom brought out the food. Orbie loved to play with the hose, and he hadn't done it for a long time. So Dad turned the tap on, and Orbie felt the water fill the hose. He headed over to the new plants and began spraying them as Dad picked up the wheelbarrow handle. Dad signaled that he was doing a fine job, and he headed over to the compost pile. As Orbie watched the hose shower the little plants, an orange one made him think of fire. He imagined that was what it was. It was just a pretend fire because Orbie knew you absolutely never, ever play with fire. He looked at the little plant, imagining that the water was putting the fire out. Then he moved on to the next. He pretended that one was a fire, too. As he watered the garden, he imagined that he was dressed in a fireman's clothes and that he was fighting a roaring blaze. He crouched down, as he thought firemen would do, to hold on to the big, powerful hose. From the compost pile, Dad called to Orbie that he was going to go in and wash up. He reminded Orbie not to water the flowers too much. Orbie raised his arm and waved at Dad. But in Orbie's mind, it wasn't Dad at all. It was his fire chief telling him to do a good job. That's when the back wall of the house caught Orbie's eye. He looked at it and thought that maybe he should water it too so the pretend fire wouldn't spread. He lifted his hose and sprayed the wall of the house. Inside, Mom and Katie had just run down to get the lemonade out of the freezer, and Dad had gone upstairs to wash. Nobody noticed that the screen in the open kitchen window was getting wet, and nobody noticed that a sprinkle of water was falling onto the kitchen floor. Outside, Orbie was pretending that the fire was quite fierce now, and just like a real fireman, he was spraying away up high near the kitchen window. I have to say, he didn't notice that the window was open. He was too busy hearing the cheers from the crowd as he, the mighty fireman, saved the day. Katie and Mom had a whole lot of trouble finding lemonade and finally found a container of pink lemonade at the back of the freezer. By the time they started back up the stairs, water was trickling down. Mom shrieked that she must have left the kitchen tap running and raced up. But when she got there, the tap was turned off. A shower was pouring in through the window screen. She shouted for whoever was using the hose to stop pointing it at the window. Outside, Orbie heard people cheering that he was a hero, and he smiled to himself. He continued to shower the wall with water and didn't stop until Mom threw open the back door and loudly called his name. Orbie snapped out of his imagination and came back into reality. And the truth was, he was as shocked as Mom that he had watered the kitchen instead of the garden. Dad raced down the stairs and skidded across the kitchen floor as he asked what was wrong. His feet flew in all directions. He had to grab onto Mom to stay up. It was really funny. Katie laughed until tears rolled down her cheeks. And so did Mom and Dad. Orbie burbled that he was so sorry. He was pretending he was a fireman and hadn't noticed what he was doing. Dad hauled out a big bucket and gave Orbie the mop. Katie wanted to help too, so she took the little mop, and together with Mom and Dad's help, they dried the kitchen floor. As they munched on their sandwiches and sipped lemonade, Orbie apologized again, and Dad told Orbie that something good had happened when he flooded the kitchen. Orbie couldn't think what it was, so Dad told him. He had learned that whenever you do a job, whether it's fun or not, it's important to keep your mind on it. And Orbie smiled because Dad was right. And I hope whenever you're helping out with family chores, you'll remember what Orbie learned. If you do, you'll be a wonderful helper. I just know it.
Good hunters. Because bats hunt for insects at night. They need more than their eyes. By sending out a high-pitched sound and listening for the echo, they can find food no matter how dark it is. It's like being able to see in the dark. Just imagine how useful that could be.